Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Gambians head to the polls to choose their parliament in their first vote under new leader Adama Barrow. Also, a French soldier is killed in a clash with militants in Mali, becoming the 19th to die since Paris intervened against a jihadist invasion in the country 4 years ago. And Somalia's president offers al-Shabaab extremist amnesty or war. Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed gives jihadists 60 days to surrender or face the consequences. But first, Gambians headed to the polls for their first election since former leader Yahya Jammeh stepped down from 2 decades of rule in January. Thursday's parliamentary vote is expected to end the long-time domination of Jammeh's party. Whilst many of the electorate were keen to flex their newfound freedoms, there are concerns that if the new legislature doesn't strike the right balance, the December vote against Jammeh could be compromised. Well, for more on this, we're joined by Duncan Woodside for us. Duncan, you've followed the day. How have things gone?
Well, indeed, yes, we've been following things very closely here on the ground in and around Banjul, the capital of Gambia. Now, the polls opened at 8 o'clock local time this morning. They closed at 5 o'clock. And the drums that people dropped marbles into, that's the method of voting here, they were sealed shortly before 8 o'clock in the presence of party activists and international observers, and unsealed shortly after voting concluded. The counting took place in the individual constituencies, and the results were posted or being posted on the walls of those constituency buildings, while also being relayed to the Electoral Commission, where the results are being verified and confirmed. I spoke earlier to the head of the Electoral Commission. He told me that he expects that the initial results will be out sometime this evening, with confirmation most likely to come at some point in the early hours of tomorrow morning or late morning. So a lot of uncertainty still. The race is very much open, in stark contrast to the previous parliamentary poll in 2012, which effectively was largely boycotted by the opposition.
So, Duncan, so what changes are Gambians hoping to see under their new parliament?
Well, what they're hoping to see is a vibrant legislature, one that where debates happen, where policies are formulated, where committees have proposed changes to legislation, as is the case in any thriving democracy. Because what's happened previously under the previous regime was that effectively the legislature was just a rubber stamp for the president. The new president, Adama Barrow, has promised that this will not be the case under his stewardship, that there will be a role to play for Parliament in approving legislation and formulating legislation. Of course, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We'll have to wait and see how things play out. But the early signs are that this is a very open process. 9 parties contesting the elections, and it's by no means certain which party will emerge as the largest within the Parliament.
Thanks very much. Duncan Woodside there for us in Banjul. Now, the 19th French soldier to be killed in Mali since Paris intervened to combat an extremist incursion 4 years ago has died. Julien Barbet lost his life in a clash with armed militants. The country is still vulnerable to attacks from jihadist groups.
Julien Barbet, a corporal of the 6th Regiment of Angers. He'd been deployed on a mission to the southeast of Mali, some kilometers from the small town of Ombori, near the border with Burkina Faso. Since March 17th, along with his fellow French soldiers, he had been battling armed militants who often hide in the Sahel region. Barbet's unit was ambushed as they were assisting the crew of a lightly armoured vehicle hit by an improvised explosive device.
In the middle of this inspection, they opened fire on them from a close proximity. One of the bullets killed Corporal Barbet.
Another soldier was wounded. Overnight, the situation was tense, with several helicopters deployed to the area. The officers on the ground have been reacting following the attack. Despite their sadness, they're determined to continue the fight against the jihadists. Meanwhile, the body of Corporal Barbet has been repatriated to France. Back in Paris, François Hollande paid tribute to the sacrifice of this soldier.
I want to remind you that 19 soldiers have been killed since the intervention in Mali began. I would like to express my gratitude to all these soldiers. To say that for their family, this is a terrible pain, to lose a son in these conditions, or a partner, or a spouse, or a husband.
4,000 French soldiers are today deployed on Malian soil.
The International Criminal Court will hold a hearing on Friday over South Africa's failure to arrest Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. He's wanted for genocide and war crimes and is subject to an international arrest warrant. In 2015, Bashir was forced to flee ICC member South Africa after a court ruled that he should be banned from leaving. There's been fierce criticism of the youth wing of Burundi's ruling party after a video circulated showing hundreds from the group, known as the Imbonerakure, singing a song about impregnating the opposition's women. The ruling CNND-FDD initially said the footage was fake, but has since condemned the youth's use of threatening language. The Imbonerakure have been accused of various abuses since the country was plunged into crisis by President Pierre Nkurunziza's successful bid for a third term in office 2 years ago. His critics say authorities should take a tough line with those shown in the video.
I think that they should be prosecuted. Because it wasn't really a song. It was more of a list of insults to women and to the people of Burundi. Everything must be done so that things like this don't happen again. Because it's not part of Burundian culture to sing such songs.
Now, Somalia's new president replaced his security chiefs on Thursday and offered al-Shabaab militants a choice between amnesty or war. Mohammed Abdullahi Mohammed said extremists who surrendered within 60 days would be given accommodation and education. Those who did not would face the consequences. His remarks come a day after 7 died in a car bombing in the capital. Al-Shabaab's violent attacks have become a regular feature in Mogadishu, but the city is still woefully short on the infrastructure needed to cope. Laurent Berchdecker tells us more.
After seeing one of his neighbors bleed to death while being carted to hospital, Abdikadir Adem decided to spend all his savings on a battered van and launch his own ambulance service. 10 years later, his fleet of second-hand vehicles has become an everyday sight in the streets of Mogadishu.
It is the only free ambulance service in Somalia, whole Somalia, especially in Mogadishu. And we are not dealing only the explosions, but also we deal with pregnant women. We took from the home to the hospital. We took the children who's in diarrhea, the people who are in need to the hospitals.
Somalia has been mired in a bloody civil war for the past 25 years and is the target of recurrent attacks by Islamist group Al-Shabaab. An estimated 80 people were killed in bomb blasts in Mogadishu alone since January. With authorities overwhelmed, Adem's ambulances provide a life-saving social service to the population, but it's also dangerous work for the drivers, who often find themselves on the front lines.
One of our drivers was picking people up in the Halwadag district, and artillery fire hit the ambulance. He lost his life.
The initiative, which is almost entirely funded by private donations, aims to fill the gap in Somalia's dwindling public services. Of a national budget of $246 million last year, only $1 million were set aside for healthcare.
And the Tunisian courts handed a British DJ a 1-year jail term in absentia on Thursday after he played a remixed recording of the Muslim Call to Prayer. Dax J, who left Tunisia after last weekend's set in the town of Hammamet, was sentenced to 6 months for public indecency and 6 months for offending public morality. The court had initially dismissed charges against the nightclub owner and an organiser behind the event in the coastal resort, but the prosecution appealed, saying the two should have checked what Dax J would be playing. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again. Take care.
نقاش فرانس 24 جدل الآن وحديث وتعليق من وفي كل مكان.
France 24, c'est une passerelle entre les cultures, c'est la diversité.
It's also a great way of sharing it and discussing it on social media.
We give a voice to women and girls, whoever they are, wherever they are.
هل تعرفون باريس؟ أحقاً تعرفونها؟ تابعوا France 24 لمعرفة المزيد.
Tout ce que vous avez toujours voulu savoir sur l'Europe, c'est sur notre chaîne.